A couple other shout outs while we're going live here. We have a couple, some staff members. Peter Andrews works for the House Democrats. Peter is in the back. I don't know my glasses, by the way, so Peter, I recognize you, but back there gets a little blurry. Daniela Luna, where's Daniela? Daniela works with me in my office. I do not have none of us have like dozens of staff members. So Daniela, I'm so fortunate that have her exclusively. She and I work together. Many of you, if you called the office or whatever, have worked with Daniela on constituent issues. So I just wanted you to be able to put face to the name. So that is Daniela. Is there anyone that you guys want to introduce here that's from you? No? Okay. So as many of you know, my name is Derek Slapp, State Senator for the 5th State Senate District. So I represent 5 towns, all of West Hartford, almost all of Farmington, all of Burlington, and then a sliver of Bloomfield. So each, there's 36 state senators in Connecticut. We each have about 100,000 constituents. You do the math, about 3.6 million people. So there you go. I am chair of the Higher Education Committee. We have joint committees in Connecticut. So there's a House chair and a Senate chair. I mention that in part because, the committees that we serve on, and you'll hear as we go down the line here, really impacts a lot of the work that we do, right? Because it's what we're assigned to do from the legislative leaders. So it doesn't mean, and I'm about to tell you kind of one or two of my priorities this past session, that we're not working on other things or we don't care about other issues. But it really kind of in some ways has to be our top priority because that's the way that the building and lawmaking works. I'm on 6 committees total, Vice Chair of Public Safety, again, Chair of Higher Ed, and I won't list the others, but Appropriations is one, and Representative Exum and Representative Gilchrist are also on Appropriations, so they could talk about kind of their priorities on Appropriations. I went in, I listened to Governor Lamont's speech at the very beginning of session. That seemed like a long, long time ago. It was back in January. And he highlighted 2 themes that I agree with him on, and I think were good charges for everybody. I think we were already probably thinking of that the session should be about opportunity and affordability. And I think that was, in many, many aspects, the focus that we had a lot. Not exclusively, but so 3 of my priorities, real quick, were one, and this is not just exclusive to me, I think all my colleagues here would agree with this, but was delivering as much state aid to the 5th State Senate District, but in this case, West Hartford, as possible. And I'm very pleased to say that we are expected now to have the 5th largest increase of all municipalities in the state, the 5th largest increase in special education funding for the next 2 years. So yeah, that deserves, right? It's good. It's really important for, of course, families and children who are receiving special education services. It's also very important, even if you are not in that boat, because we all, pay property taxes, right, to fund these services. And it's critical that we have the services, but we also need to make sure that people aren't getting priced out of their homes too, right, with property taxes. So anyways, that was a super big priority of mine. Another one was really beginning to fix and reform our public scholarship program in the state of Connecticut. And so it had been woefully underfunded. This is our scholarship program for Connecticut students who are going on to Connecticut schools. And 2/3 of eligible students, these are from middle class and I would say lower income families, do not get any funding. These are talking about $5,000 scholarships. For a lot of families, it means whether the kids can go to school or whether they have to take on massive amounts of debt. And I'm very pleased to say that we didn't get full funding. However, we had the largest increase in our public scholarship program in over 20 years. And we finally fixed the timing issue too, because can you believe this? We have high school seniors who are needing to find out if they're going to get a scholarship from a Connecticut school so they can stay in Connecticut and you don't have to go to another state to visit them, right? And they're not finding out about the scholarship for a year later until they've already made the decision. And this was one of these things that like drives you crazy, right, with government. And we finally fixed it. I won't go into the weeds unless you want to know about all the challenges, but nonetheless, we fixed the timing and we are on our way to fully funding the program. So that is going to really, really help the economy. So the last thing was, and this may seem a little weird, but the last thing is wanted to do no harm, right? And there are so many initiatives. And to be fair, not just from our friends on the other side of the aisle, there are many from our own colleagues. Some energy would be one example, where there were initiatives to gut our environmental programs, as one example, or to change special education in a way that would really put an unfair burden on parents. These were proposals that were getting a lot of steam, and I had to, lay down in the railroad tracks and really use all my might to try to stop these, and I'm very pleased that we were able to prevent, I think in many cases, bad things from happening. So, all right, I am going to stop and hand it over to my good friend and colleague, and you know her, Representative Jillian Gilchrist, and she'll take it from here.
Great, thank you, Senator. So good to see all of you. I echo what Derek said. It's always so nice to see so many West Hartford residents turn out, so thank you all for being here. So I'm chair of the Human Services Committee, and then I serve on the Appropriations Committee, the Public Health Committee, and the Judiciary Committee. And so the first item that I'm incredibly proud about actually relates to folks in this room who I've heard from in settings like this about the need to address the issue of profound autism and then the issue of abuse and neglect within the developmental services in our state. Learned from folks right here in this front row that since the inception of the Department of Developmental Services, they had never updated their policies on abuse and neglect. And so the bill we passed is requiring them to look at that, update those processes, report back on abuse and neglect, and then update those policies every 5 years. So proud of that. And then a needs assessment to better understand profound autism and other needs in our state so we can develop services that are desperately needed to serve that population. So thank you to those of you, and just want to really kind of stress the importance of events like this and our role listening to you, the constituents, because I wouldn't have known about these issues without those in this room. So thank you so much. The next piece I'm incredibly proud about is the funding we were able to get for the nonprofits in the state of Connecticut. They will need more until we adequately fund them, but when we were having discussions towards the end of the legislative session, probably like 2.5 weeks out, we were told,
things were not good.
Yeah, the nonprofits are just going to be upset, like they're going to be the ones that miss out, and we're like, no, absolutely not. And so we pushed and we pushed, and we got the funding we needed. And I just heard coming into here that the bill about indexing for nonprofits got signed by the governor. So that is incredibly important for those who are like, what does that mean? What that's going to do every year now, the governor's budget will have to report on what the cost of living adjustment is and how much we should be funding the nonprofits. There's still the option not to fund it, but it legitimizes their services and gives us a number, so it's not the Nonprofit Alliance and all the folks in the field having to come to beg us for money each year. We'll actually have the data that illustrates how much they're owed from the state of Connecticut. So that's a huge positive. And then what I'm frustrated by, I don't think we went far enough to adjust the fiscal guardrails in the state of Connecticut. We did move on the volatility cap, which is one piece of that puzzle. And under that umbrella, then, my big disappointment is that we weren't able to make a significant investment in Medicaid, which, hello, we all knew what was coming, and now as of Friday, we are facing some significant cuts from the federal government with regards to Medicaid. So my hope is in a special session and going into next session, we will actually invest a significant amount of money in that program. And now I'll turn it over to my good colleague and friend, Representative Farrar.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Great to see you all. I'm State Representative Kate Farrar. I also represent West Hartford, and I also represent a part of Newington, so I'm the 20th District. And wonderfully, I know we've hit July, session ended in June, and I would just say, obviously, in this great moment of uncertainty, I think for us, our community, our state, our work is never done. So just because session is over doesn't mean we aren't already thinking not just about the upcoming session that would start in February, but there's the potential of a special session in September to not only address a lot of the devastating cuts from the federal government, but to address what was the governor's veto of a very important housing bill that we passed in the legislature. So I want to put that in your frame of mind, because no matter what you bring up tonight, it's things that we can work on, kind of leading into the fall, and again, leading into the next session come February. But again, my role in the legislature, we all have different hats, as you heard the Senator Slap referenced. But I think for all of us, we took seriously how we were going to use this session, as he said, to create more opportunity, create more affordability. And there were several bills, especially around the affordability piece, be it from the steps we took on an energy bill that will lower some of the electric bill costs, to us taking steps, which I'll speak to in more depth, around reducing childcare costs, to us as a state, still taking our role in addressing the climate crisis seriously while the federal government kind of throws up its hands. So I think as a state, we have a lot to be proud of. That doesn't mean we still don't have a lot of work to do. But I would say for me personally, as someone who serves on the Finance Committee, which manages the revenue side of our budget, also serves on the Higher Education Committee, Transportation Committee, and leads on our childcare issues, there is a lot to talk about in regards to how we're really trying to support families in our state. We know in our state that over 40% of the families in our state simply cannot make ends meet. We are a high-cost state. It is high cost to raise children here. And that's why on the Finance Committee for several years, we've been pushing hard to establish what is often referred to as a child tax credit. This would provide in our tax system a deduction for families that have children. And we got further than we've ever gotten before, passed this out of the Finance Committee. It was in budget negotiations until the very end. Oh, welcome, Representative. And unfortunately, it was not a part of the final budget package. What we were successful at doing was getting an additional $250 tax credit for families who receive the earned income tax credit right now. And what I would say is that the fight really continues to make sure that we could pursue this child tax credit, because as families are facing increased grocery costs, increased gas prices, increased rents, all of those things contribute, right, to them really having to make sacrifices. And the child tax credit, as proposed, would be $600 per child, up to 3 children. And we know that it truly is the anti-poverty measure that our state really needs. So you can count on me, and I know all of my colleagues here were super supportive of this effort, and this is something we're going to keep pushing for, because we know that it's incredibly pivotal for families who are struggling, but also to fix our upside-down tax code. So there was, again, a starting place with this $250 additional tax credit, but we are going to keep fighting for the full child tax credit. But in reference to children, we really actually did deliver historic legislation and funding for children and families in the state of Connecticut. Since last year, I've been leading our House priority bills on childcare, and we have now established a historic investment in the state through what's called our Early Childhood Education Endowment. This means that just a few weeks ago, we invested $300 million in what will be an ongoing source of funds so that we can, number one, bring down costs for families who are going after childcare, so that no family who make $100,000 or less will pay anything for childcare. If you make over $100,000 or more in a state-funded program, you'll only pay 7% of your income. This is very transformational for families that, again, are not just struggling, but often considering, it doesn't even make sense for me to work, or do I need to pick up a second job in order to afford childcare? The bill and that endowment funding source also will be paying childcare educators more, which is essential because those educators make minimum wage in many cases and are not on parity with our K-12 educators, although what they're doing is just as pivotal as K-12 educators. Yes, exactly. And that support for educators also translates to some funding that will start next year for health insurance assistance for early childhood educators. And finally, a use of the investment that we're starting to make with the endowment is to make sure that there is an ongoing funding source for facilities that want to either update their childcare facility, or if we have a need in a community to build a new childcare facility, and those capital costs are there. So I would just say that as a state, again, there is so much that we're all facing and so much that we can read in the news that seems to be going wrong, but our state can really do transformational things for families, and we should be really proud that we really are leading in regards to bringing down childcare costs and supporting educators. So I'm absolutely proud to share that with you all. And then finally, because I am also on the Transportation Committee and I'm the only West Hartford member on the Transportation Committee, I did just want to mention a couple things. Because in addition to affordability, what I hear about the most is just folks wanting to make sure that our roads are safer and that everyone can easily get around by car, bike, walking, etc. And there's a few things we did this year in the legislature really to try to make sure that our roads are safer. So number one, we had a pilot program on our highways for work zones to have cameras for speeding, and that is now expanded statewide. So you'll start to see as you drive on the highways, like all of our construction zones to have cameras to catch more speeders in construction zones. Secondly, we actually upped the tickets and the repercussions for what's called reckless driving. So reckless driving is considered if you're driving over 85 miles an hour, which I know too many of us are seeing on our highways. So we increased the penalties there. And then also I want to mention that there has been an issue in the last few years with an increase in what's often referred to as street takeovers, which can be when people are all in a row, like trying to take over the streets. It's happened certainly on New Britain Ave, down in my district. And we have now given the police some more tools to deal with those street takeovers if they do occur. So I just wanted to mention those few other transportation things, and happy to take transportation questions too. But again, those are the biggest highlights, and again, just looking forward to what you all have to share and ask as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Farrar. And so I'm Representative Tammy Exum. I am the 19th district, which is mostly West Hartford, about 81%, and the remaining portion is in Avon. And my roles are serving on appropriations as vice chairperson, deputy majority leader, and also I tri-chair a committee that that was called Transforming Children's Behavioral Health Policy and Planning Committee, and I have affectionately called it TCB for Taking Care of Business, and that's around the children's behavioral health work that I led in 2022. And to kind of go on what Senator Slapp was saying regarding the thing that, as I sit in this room, I think about serving on the Board of Education, which I had the pleasure of doing for 4 years before running for state representative. And before doing that, I was with a group of parents, was a founding member of the Special Education PTO. And that was a very long time ago, it feels like now, but it was a really important initiative. And it kind of is coming to mind as I'm thinking about one of the things I'm really so proud of is the work that we're starting to do around special education. We really have needed this kind of work and reform and attention. And one of the things that I really appreciate is looking at building programs in district. And how do we best do that? We know West Hartford is known for special education. We're a destination. Before I was on the Board of Ed, I used to tell parents who had children who had some needs, they come to West Hartford, move to West Hartford. And now people are telling me, yeah, I shouldn't have said that. We have too many. It is a place that offers wonderful services and resources. But it is very expensive and the price is going up. And one of the other pieces that I really like about this legislation is that when children are placed outside of the district, there's been a variance as far as really understanding what some of these programs are doing, what the providers are doing. Can we do drop-ins and spot checks? And so now there's going to be more oversight and involvement in that, which I think is incredibly important. And that is one of the highlights for me. I'm also someone who sits, by sitting in appropriations, and certainly Senator Slapp and Representative Gilchrist can attest, we hear from the nonprofits a lot. And honestly, it's heartbreaking to hear people working 2 and 3 jobs and really doing some of the work that is incredibly important and valuable. And to be able to do anything to help address funding for that particular population is very good. But we have a long ways to go. But at least it's something. And this is a population that I do not take for granted, but the nonprofits really do help hold so many of us together. So those are things that are very good. One of the things that was incredibly frustrating for me and it was the last night, and it's when you really see how the process can play out. So I am I was very similar to what you were hearing Rep. Farrar say as far as her role this year as really being our champion around the childhood initiative and the work that we've done, and it is tremendous, and I just really applaud that hard work. I know what it feels like. Very similar was I in that position where we had a $300 million investment in 2022. It was our #1 priority bill when we looked at children's behavioral health. And I have really stayed focused on that work. One of the things that I know for sure that I've learned is if you turn away from the work, it will go away because so many initiatives need the funding, right? You're all competing for a certain amount of money. So I've stayed very focused on that. And as a matter of fact, I mean, many of you may be aware that I very suddenly lost my husband October 1st, 2023. And it was the work around children's behavioral health was one of the reasons that I went back. There's a commitment that we made, and our children need us, and we have been doing really important work. One of the areas, for instance, is the urgent crisis centers. I'm not sure if you're familiar with these or not. When we think about going to an urgent care for our physical bodies, now we have urgent crisis centers that are established, 3 of them operating, as we would hope, a beautiful model that acts the same way, where you can go when your child is in crisis. And this is to be something that is an alternative that's very effective from the emergency departments. When you go to an emergency department, if a child is in need of help, and as far as the fear that the child is going to self-harm, that is the place. But anything that's not to that point, and if you really want to get a child's needs addressed, this is the environment that is absolutely ideal. The closest one to us being the village. It is the ideal setting, and they have shown how children are de-escalated. Families are given resources, continuum of care, and it is a game changer. We're hearing it. The problem is, so many people don't know about it. Many of you are hearing about it for the first time. Our biggest source of referrals are the schools. It's new to the schools. Think about how long it took us to learn to call 911. Then think of how long it took us to call 988. And I just heard a report yesterday that many people aren't calling 988 because they find it stigmatizing and they don't want to do that. But we're working hard to destigmatize children's behavioral health and mental health issues, and this is a part of the work. So for me, what was disappointing was I did two things. One thing was great in that I had a little bit of a fear and was able to get some funding in the event that the bill did not pass. We had a bill around children's behavioral health that really looked at doing, studies around the some of the work we're doing and how to best administer this work. And at the last minute, we ran out of time, and we weren't able to get this bill through. It also was extending the applied behavior analysis. The age for that was a part of this bill as well, moving that to 26. It's an important bill. But what we were able to do was to secure funding for the urgent crisis centers for 2 years, $7 million each. We were able to secure funding for the emergency mobile psychiatric services at $8.6 million. We were able to have some bridge money, and that was in the budget. So that part of it passed. And the speakers promised when we come back for special session, the rest of it will pass. The language, the bill piece will pass as well. So I was super disappointed as looking at a legislature that everyone voted yes unanimously on this. It was sad to see the disconnect, but that's what happens if you don't keep things right front and center and remind people of what's really important. And I stay dedicated to that work. It's really good to see you all, and I just want to say it's just like West Hartford to have a room full of people on a night when they said we're going to have a thunderstorm, and you all are all here and up front and present, and I really appreciate that. I'm so proud to be a part of this community.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I'm State Representative Bobby Gibson. I serve on the Appropriations, the Education, and General Law Committees, and it's a pleasure to be here today. During my regular job, I'm a middle school principal, so it seems like I'm always rushing around. They're cleaning the buildings now, so there's no school, no children there, but they're cleaning the buildings, so I have to make sure that goes well. But before I start, I just want to say, Tammy, you keep hanging in there with your bill. That was a tough night. We thought it was going to get passed, but it's going to happen. We've learned, in government, sometimes things happen very quickly, but as all my colleagues here can attest to, you got to have that stamina, right, and stick it out, because something that you might not get passed today, you might take a couple sessions, and you'll get it passed eventually. So we'll get it done, Tammy.
And it passed the House.
But it wasn't a Senator Slap, though.
No, it was not. I would have voted 5 times.
So I'm going to see if I can bring up some new things that weren't already covered by my colleagues. So there were a couple bills that I was able to, as I said, work on that has been brought up in the past that I was able to stick with and enhance. One was the Age in Place program that initially, I don't believe when we first brought it out, West Hartford was a part of it, because I don't think I had West Hartford at the time where I was new. But I was able to include West Hartford in it this year. So the Age in Place program is a program where seniors can age gracefully in place in their homes. So they don't have to go to assisted living facilities. So whether it's a walk-in shower, a ramp, stairs, things of that nature, that program now has increased in funds. The first year that we brought it forth, it was $300,000 over a 2-year period. We were able to get it up to $5 million. So we just are waiting for the governor to call it in the bond package. So we're very happy about that program. A lot of seniors are in need of things of that nature. And if you have any questions, I'm sure I can give them to you later on. Another bill that we were able to pass is the Farm to School bill. This bill allows farmers to, it's like twofold. Farmers, it helps them to grow produce in their farms. And it also helps schools to get produce from farms and to grow their own produce. So kids learn about nutrition, about what's the right things to eat, what's the wrong things to eat, what goes into your body, your body grows. And it also provides provision for schools who want to start greenhouses to make sure that they can do that. So that's something that is relatively new to West Hartford. We're going to really try to push that because it was a very popular bill that passed. And another thing was funding for some local nonprofits. We're able to get some money, not a lot, but some money for some local nonprofits to help them in their business. And that's very important because to support that work that they do. A couple bills that I wasn't able to get across this year, but we're going to continue working on it, it's an enhanced muffler bill. So especially this time of year, people want to take out their cars and rum, but it's very noisy, noise pollution, right? So we were able to get it passed two sessions, well, a session ago, but it needed more funding. So we're going to still work on that. What it will do is it will provide municipalities the ability to put up noise detectors. So if a car travels over a certain decibel amount of noise, that it will trigger off, and the person first will get a warning. After they get a warning, if they're a continued person who's doing this, then you can perhaps get a ticket and things of that nature. It's a progressive consequence type things to that. So we're going to continue to see if we can expand on that. We're trying to get it passed in the street takeover bill, but we ran into some problems with that. Something else that something else that I'm going to, that was brought to my attention actually last week. So we were able to pass a bill through the Veterans Committee, whereas if you're a veteran and you have 100% disability, you could have your property tax exempt. And so it was a popular bill. We all respect what veterans have done for our country. But if you really look at it, veterans to non-veterans, especially veterans who are 100% disabled to people who did not serve in the military, it's not a big number. Found out that there's more to it than meets the eye. So those veterans can have their homes tax exempt, but then there's taxes on the land. So it's kind of like, why are we doing this? If it's a veteran who's 100% disabled. So that's something I would like to look into, as well as teacher and healthcare providers, especially nurses, their certifications. Seeing if we can work it, whereas if you're a educator or if you're a nurse from another state or perhaps another country who has the certification, who when you come here can pass a test, make it a little easier for them to get their certification, not have to start all over, because more and more you'll find out if you go into healthcare facilities, and my aunt was just in one a couple of weeks ago, it was horrible trying to get help for her. And it was at UConn Hospital, arguably our flagship hospital. She had to wait, and the services weren't all that great. Not to dog them, but this is the experience that she went through, so I can speak truth to that. So see if we can do something with certification. So that's all I have right now. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you. All right, now it's your turn. So I would just say that when you come up, if you would, you come up over there, and it doesn't have to be a question. It could be a statement, it could be feedback, et cetera. I will just let you know that we probably won't each of us answer if there's a question, each one, because we'll get through 3 people, right? So we really want to make sure that, if possible, that you can, brief remarks, relatively brief, just so we can make sure that as many of you have an opportunity to share your thoughts. So that said, again, it's your evening and your opportunity, and come on up, and if you would, you can go to that mic. I don't think you have to. Do you have to press a button? Claire knows how this room works. She can.
It's on the TV, that's why.
That's right. Okay.
We're asking you to go up there because, again, this is being filmed, and so we need the microphone.
Right. Just so your neighbors can hear. Okay. Great.
Tammy and Andy Sellinger from 20 Mohegan Drive in West Hartford, Connecticut. First of all, I'd like to start off by saying that not myself, but my wife and 2 other constituents were in this room right before the beginning of the session and came here to ask our representatives to address a certain issue on abuse and neglect. And I am very happy to say that our voices were heard, and not only were they heard, but the bill was passed in the session. So for all that think that, government doesn't work, I'm here to say it does. And they've been very communicative through the process, and there were several um, phone calls necessary to continue this progress on this bill. As Tammy and Kate had mentioned, it sometimes takes some finessing. So anyway, we are here to, even though, an advocate's work is never done, so we have to move forward on progressing the language and direction of abuse and neglect. Presently, nonprofit agencies, when a situation happens, they investigate and report themselves. My charge for the next session is that particular issue be addressed, because that's a very serious conflict of interest. And so I thank you very much for all you've done, and appreciate working with you next session.
Look forward to our continued work together. Thank you.
I'm Claire Nezarella, West Hartford. I wanted to thank you all for your service and how hard you work. I'm especially glad about the excess cost sharing, the special education increases, and the efforts to keep more kids in district. When a child grows up in district and has all that experience through post-secondary, they become better able to adapt in the world when they're 22 and they're now out of school. And so it's really important what you've done. The child care, so important, such a game changer. And I'm proud that our state is leading the way in the child care work. I'm very concerned about the $53 million that's been cut in education, federal support for education in the state. West Hartford alone, I think it's $330,000, and correct, the district I work for has lost $1 million. Bridgeport, $3.8 million. This was all announced on the 30th of June, where July 1st is when the schools start planning. So this is a big hit across the United States. $6.8 billion. Yeah, $6.8 billion. It also is very targeted to the migrant communities, to after school, to English as a second language. So all of that funding, I want to know, what do we have in our back pocket as a state to help make up the difference, or is it going to fall on all the towns? And then what is it as a state can we do to help these minority populations get the support they need? And when Medicaid is requiring all the work programs and all the documentation, and now they say that a dependent is not 18, they're 7 years old. You cannot leave a 7-year-old at home. At 18, a parent could go to work, even maybe a 14 or 15-year-old, but a 7-year-old. So what is it that we can do as a state to help alleviate some of our residents who are impacted by these horrible federal changes?
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick. And Claire, first of all, I just want to thank you for your service. Many of you may know that, but Claire is on our Board of Education in West Hartford, so thank you for all that you do. Not an easy job. So we don't fully know that, the impact. I mean, as you said, that the federal budget was just passed. Representative Gilchrist mentioned that we are going to be coming back in September. I assume, we're having discussions about backfilling some cuts, and we're going to have to prioritize that. We obviously can't backfill all of them. I mean, it's billions and billions of dollars. So I would think healthcare and education would be, two of the top ones. I actually had a conversation with in West Hartford, about West Hartford schools just today with our superintendent about something else. But the Title III came up, which is, cuts to, as you mentioned, English as a second language. West Hartford gets, just from that one fund, federal fund, about $130,000, which does not seem like a lot in of itself, but that goes to tutors to help our children who don't necessarily, are proficient in English, learn English, right? And that money's gone. So there's a lot of examples like that. I think we're going to have to prioritize. I do know that a lot of the cuts, though, are pushed out for a couple years. So I hope, and I'm going to be a little partisan here, I hope we win some elections between now and then so we can start turning those cuts around. So I'll leave it there. But.
I think that, I agree with much of what the senator just said. I think where folks in the state can be helpful, what I'm going to be pushing for is, which beats the drum of what was all session, is we really do need to adjust the fiscal guardrails. So we have this thing called the rainy day fund. Well, I mean, people say this kind of all the time. Well, now is it pouring now? Like, when is it? Are we in a rainstorm? It feels like we are. So I think but because of how much money it is, I think we need to go beyond just the rainy day fund and adjust the fiscal guardrails. So we are paying down our pension debt at a rate higher than anyone else in the country. And so we can both continue to pay off our debt, but also invest in our state. And so we really, I think the legislature will need to push on the governor's office. There's also the potential of revenue.
Yes.
And I'm going to turn that over.
I'm sure. Okay. Yes. So to this point around, what is the storm that we're in and what is the storm that's coming? I think it's pivotal. As was said, we're in a very different situation than other states. We do have a rainy day fund. It's approximately $5 billion. That seems like a lot, but again, would not possibly cover the billions and billions of dollars of cuts in services that this federal budget bill would mean. And so, yes, one approach certainly, could be looking at, well, what do we cover, right? But also something that I think we have to think about as a state is, what is the additional reasonable and common sense revenues that we can look at as a state? We have seen already in our state how upside down our tax code is. And, by actually increasing the taxes by even a small amount on the wealthiest in our state, we could raise hundreds of millions of more dollars and even be lower and even still have a lower tax rate than all of our surrounding states on those individuals. So it really is going to be a moment where we have to come to terms with who are we going to be as a state? Are we simply going to let many of these federal cuts be and let folks lose their health insurance, let children go hungry? Who are we going to be? And because the rainy day fund will only go so far, and it's going to require us to look closely at how we can meaningfully bring in revenue that, again, also, if you think about what you've learned about the federal bill, is that folks who are the wealthiest in our country and our state are going to be paying less taxes under the federal law. And so it only makes sense from that aspect too, how can we fix, again, what is upside down in our state already and simply potentially increase those taxes, again, in a minimal way, but can make a big difference to covering a lot of these needs in our state. And I think that's what we really, many of us want to focus on as we're headed into this conversation in September. So I would just encourage you to, keep up that dialogue, not just with your neighbors and us, but as Representative Gilchrist said, with, friends that you have in other parts of the state who can talk to their legislators, and also the governor's office, because it's really going to be a continual, effort between the legislature and the governor's office to put together budgets that actually address what these cuts are doing to our state.
Thank you.
Do you want to come on that?
I really don't have a whole lot more to add. I think that is what we have to do. We have to look at our current spending and our opportunities around the fiscal guardrails, and we have to look at revenue, and we also have to understand that it's going to be very difficult to have the money to replace so much of what is to come And so what keeps coming to mind for me is we have got to be activated, and we have to get out and vote and make some changes during the midterms. And I think that is the biggest way to really have an impact, hopefully, before too many people are harmed, because as Senator Slapp said, so many. I was looking at my phone because I have this screenshot of the tax cuts that happen right away. But then when we look at some of the work requirements and things that are less popular, things that hurt people more around Medicaid and food stamps, that is later, after, is that like the December and later? And that's very strategic, right? And so it's looking at how do we really wish to show up and look at that being an opportunity during that time. But in the meantime, we might have enough that we can pull together to kind of, I think, maybe, for a couple of years until we figure out a real plan. But we have to really seriously look at things that make us uncomfortable, perhaps, but are very important. So that's all I have to add.
Thank you. Hi, Carrie Stockman from West Hartford. Thank you all for working so hard to get so much important stuff done this session. It's really been a tough time, and I know that you have a governor who's not signing all the bills we think he should sign. So thank you for that. I'm following Claire, which is very appropriate because I'm here because I work with an Afghan refugee family, and you've all heard this before, but I'm very concerned about what can we in this state and in our towns do to prevent the nightmare that's going on with ICE raids by the masked men, and how can we legally and appropriately encourage our towns and activate our towns and our neighbors to try and help support people who are not documented but who are here working and who have been here working for a long time. I have a best friend from college who called and talked about what's going on in LA, and the nightmare stories are exactly what you're hearing on the press. They are just car washes being swept out, people being stopped on the streets. They're profiling. What can we locally, in a positive, proactive, but legal way, do to try and impede that from happening in Connecticut?
Thank you for that. I'll start briefly and then hand it over. First off, just you articulating how important this is for all of us, I think, is a starting point, because I think the more that we keep saying to our family, our friends, our community, that Connecticut and West Hartford is welcoming to all, that we are a town and a state of immigrants, and that's what makes our town and state strong, that is really important for people to hear in the face of fear and hate, which is coming from the national level. And so I think from a starting point, we need to keep saying that loud and clear, because that is so pivotal for people to hear from all of us, no matter what position you're in. The second thing is, I think that when you look at many of the organizations who are trying to serve and support refugees and immigrants in our state, many of those organizations were the first organizations under the Trump administration to lose funding. So the organizations I'm referring to are IRIS and CIRI, and they are still struggling financially, right? And are still needing ongoing financial support, volunteers to help support individuals in the community so they feel that support. As a state, unlike other states, we actually provide state funding to those organizations. So this year in the budget, we were able to secure $2.5 million, again, for those organizations to continue their important work. But I think as much as folks are willing and able to do to work with those organizations that are supporting those individuals is really pivotal. And then thirdly, I would say that we definitely have a role at the state level to make sure that people's rights are protected. That's why this session we strengthened, which is often referred to as the Trust Act. Yes, we wanted to do more, to be clear. We wanted to do more. And so I would say around the more aspect, which is what some of us are talking about in the special session, is there's several states that have pursued efforts to require ICE to show identification, require ICE to not have masks. Those are conversations that many of us are having as legislators because those are very basic requirements that we would expect of any other form of law enforcement. So I think that there really are more things that we can do so that if folks are in Connecticut, that they feel protected and heard. Those are just a couple things that come to mind.
And maybe move the immigration court. The immigration court is on the 6th floor in the building. ICE is on the 5th floor. And so there has
Yeah.
been a dramatic drop-off in people who are attending court hearings in order to establish legal residents who are being grabbed on their way to
Yes.
court. So
Yes,
that might be another
it's
thing.
terrifying. It's terrifying. Bobby?
I'll just add, back in February, we held an immigration forum, and a couple of my colleagues were there to talk about it. Because at that point in time, it was heavy in the news. Everyone was upset and frightened, to be very honest with you, with what was going on. If need be, maybe perhaps we can hold another one if there's something we think that's prevalent, and maybe we can have it here in West Hartford. I held it in Hartford. I was asked to do it there because of it was really being highlighted in the area which I had to form. But we could pull it together because the biggest thing is just knowing your rights, knowing what they can and cannot do, and getting consultation from attorneys who are actually experts in that field to give you the information. Because everyone knows a little bit, but knowing a little bit of information can sometimes be dangerous. So we can pull one together if need be. It's not a problem.
Hi, everyone. Nina Kazba. I work in Farmington, Connecticut. Thank you very much for having this town hall. As echoing everyone else, thank you for your transparency and open communication. I'm here in my capacity with the Yukon Health Center AUP chapter. I'm the vice president of our faculty union. So I'm a physician and teacher and faculty member at the Yukon Health Center. And I know you guys have supported us and worked very hard, but unfortunately, as many of you guys are aware, we have a $61 million budget cut to Yukon Health. And if you just allow me a little bit, I know that you are very well aware because we've been on meetings together in the legislature to discuss some of these issues. But just to quickly review, as you guys know, there are many federal cuts. Yukon typically gets around $95 million in NIH research funding. We are projected to get half of that this year. It's important to know that a lot of that funding goes to support faculty salaries and, very importantly, graduate student and undergraduate student education, internships, research fellowships, et cetera. And as many of you guys know, I hope we still remain the flagship hospital of our state and can do better and thrive better. But Yukon School of Medicine is the only public medical school in our state. We're the only public hospital. 40% of Yukon medical graduates come back to Connecticut to serve, like myself. And as we know, with the recent bill, and I'm not going to say its name because it's not beautiful, it is big. But the federal law that passed estimates that 200,000 people in Connecticut will lose Medicaid when it comes into effect. In a large proportion of our patients that we serve and take care of at Yukon, are our underserved populations. It's also important to note that the bill also included student loan caps, so limiting students' ability to take out student loans, which as a medical student, unfortunately, those can be $50,000 to $100,000 per year. So that's going to severely limit people's abilities to pay for higher education, especially doctors, and some are even projecting that might lead to a doctor shortage as well here in our state as in other states. And that bill also has further cuts to research and science. So my question that I'm getting to shortly are, knowing that this was all happening in this context, why now, why this moment to make such a drastic cut to our only public academic health center that plays such an important role for so many in our community? People have said, oh, Yukon Health, we've been through this. As a medical student, I remember the budget cuts then. Everyone said, oh, we'll make through this. But I, respectfully was tell people that this time is not that time. We're in a very different time. We're on unprecedented attack from the federal government in terms of research funding, academic freedom. The list goes on. I know you guys are very well aware of that. And obviously, I'm here because I deeply care about my institution. I came back to serve at my medical school that I studied at, and I'm very concerned that this budget cut will deeply impact us and have permanent consequences. So my question is, what can we all do during the special session to help mitigate this incredible, drastic budget cut to UConn Health Center?
I'll just jump in real quick from my perch with higher education. And first, thanks for what you do. It's super important, obviously, for the health and welfare of our residents, but also there's no larger economic engine in the state of Connecticut than higher education. Like, it's not even close. Like, that's what we do really well. And, we should be, I think, aim to be the smartest state in the country. And, our graduates, to your point, stay in Connecticut and start careers here and raise families here. So I can't think of an issue this past legislative session where we had a bigger impasse between the General Assembly and the executive branch than higher education. There are a few that were close, but higher ed was right up there, and because you've been following it, and we had to scrape and claw for, I feel like, every single dollar, and we're not done. I am pleased that we're able to, fundraisers for folks in higher education, so that's a good thing. Our public scholarships, which I mentioned before, expansion, very good thing, and expansion of the PACT Act, which is essentially the PACT program. So our debt-free community college program, in the second year of the 2-year budget, folks who begin at one of our community colleges going debt-free can then go and continue their education at one of the CSCUs debt-free, which is amazing, which is like a really, really great opportunity and to really launch people into the middle class. So all those things really good when it comes to higher ed. I totally agree with you. We have real challenges when it comes to UConn Health and to UConn in our CSCU system. The CSCU system is sitting on a lot of reserves, as some of you may have heard, more than 50% of their budget in reserves. So a lot of us felt like, hey, we got Medicaid, we have special education, we got a lot of priorities, and we have a state system that's sitting on 50% of their reserves. So I'm a little bit more comfortable with where we landed on the CSCU system, at least temporarily, than with UConn, because UConn Health not in the same situation. So I think when we go back in the fall, we absolutely need to keep pounding the table and advocate for higher ed and specifically for what you do. So thank you.
And the senator alluded to it, but I think when people are looking at advocacy, certainly always reach out to us. But I think this is a big push on the governor.
Completely unrelated, but I'm seeing people stand for a period of time, and I have a sheet of paper, and if we'd like to sign up, we can do that, and then you can just, I'll bring that over, and you can come, we can take your names.
First of all, I'd like to thank you all for what you do. I'm glad that I don't have to wrestle with the substantial financial problems and questions that you have to. My concern is much smaller, but it's a matter of public safety. I'm an observant Jew, and I walk to synagogue on Sabbath and holidays. That's Friday night and Saturday, and various other holidays during the year. And I have to cross Trout Brook Drive and Albany Avenue. And I don't have to tell you how dangerous Albany Avenue in particular and Trout Brook Drive as a close second are. And I know that there are systems available that can be put into the walk light system that will make it function periodically so that when somebody comes up to it, they can just wait a minute or two and then be able to walk across. And I really would appreciate it if you could seriously consider that and get it to happen. Thank you.
Because you've been involved in this too? We literally have a meeting set up tomorrow now. And, I just turned that on. But go ahead.
Senator Slapp and Representative Gilchrist. Yes, Senator Slapp and Representative Gilchrist have been incredibly helpful on this. Unfortunately, as I mentioned to you, the state has kind of been the holdup, a little bit miscommunications back and forth. They've been incredibly helpful. for those who don't know, as mentioned, we can't push the walk sign to cross the street on the Sabbath for 25 hours every week. One of the members of our congregation, young Israel, was killed in a car accident not too long ago. It's very dangerous just across Albany, where many of our synagogues are. It's a major state street. People fly down, and so the effort that we've been working on seems like we made steps forward and steps back. A little bit of progress, and we end up back at square one. Senator Slapp and Representative Gilchrist have been very helpful. Towns have been very helpful, but there's been a lot of holdups at the state. They've been great, and whoever, if anyone in the legislative delegation can help, our community is very passionate about this and make us a lot safer. So.
Yeah, I think, again, thank you, and I think it's such a good example, again, of advocacy, and you all coming forward, because not something I even knew about. I've learned so much from you already. And yes, it also is an example of how some things can take a while at the state. And so I think it has been important, not that they're not trying their best and working within their confines, but it does seem to help when we engage. So looking forward to continuing to push this so we can make it safer.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll follow up with you, but like I said, we have that meeting scheduled with DOT tomorrow, and I know you all have been at this for a while, well over a year, so our patience is right here. So we're going to kick some DOT ass tomorrow. So.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Johanna Schubert. I have the privilege of serving as the co-chair of West Hartford Pride, and I don't want to miss this opportunity to say thank you to everybody who has made West Hartford such a welcome and inclusive city within our state, and for building an incredible safety infrastructure for those who identify under the LGBTQ+ banner. So thank you for that. But I'm actually want to talk to you from my position in my day job. I work for a community violence intervention nonprofit in the north end of Hartford, and we work every day with victims of violent crime who have been affected by gunshot injury, by stabbing, by assault. We go bedside within 20 minutes, and when it's possible, we build relationships with that victim and their families, offering them wraparound services and sticking with them for up to a year after that injury to make sure that they don't become one of the 40% of injured people who either become shooters themselves or get re-injured. And we have an incredible track record that I'm really proud to speak to. One of the sources of funding that we rely on is VOCA, Victims of Crime Act funding. And I know I don't just speak for us as community violence intervention and prevention practitioners. VOCA covers elderly abuse, it covers domestic violence victims, it covers anybody who has been vulnerable to violence across the state and across this country. And that money lives at the federal judicial branch, trickles down to the state, and then comes into our nonprofits. Now, we had already forecasted an up to 40% reduction from the federal government. Unfortunately, it's cut smaller than that, and agencies like mine have been forced to wrangle with budgets that are smaller, and unfortunately, populations who are suffering more because of it. So I would love to talk to you about what the plan in the state of Connecticut is to help victims of violent crime, such as the ones that I work with in the north end of Hartford, rebuild their lives with this incredibly critical funding source, the Victims of Crime Act funding.
I'll jump in, and thank you so much for the work you do, and just for being such a strong advocate for that important work. The positive is that organizations have been beating this drum for a little bit now. So for many of us, it won't be everyone, and as you know, the legislature is a 2-year legislature, so there's new folks who won't know this, but there's enough of us, I think, who know the issue and recognize that the cuts were coming. That said, this budget falls under the judicial branch, and they are not likely to ask for the money. That's just how the politics of it goes. So it's going to be on those of us on the Appropriations Committee to really be working with you all and to be pushing for this significant investment. In the past, what's helped is I can get a list. We can get a list from the judicial branch of all the recipients, because some voices are louder than others, and I think, unfortunately, different victims' rights groups get pinned against each other, which is just bizarre, but
Well,
happens.
it's a scarcity mindset, right? There's
Yes.
only so much funding,
Yes.
and so it's an unfortunate conflict, but it does
Yes.
exist.
And so I think if we can all be on the same page of pushing for everyone
Yeah.
to be able to
Yeah.
get the funding they need. But as you've heard, I mean, this then also plays into that larger conversation of where are we going to get the funding that's needed for all these important services.
Right. The thing about Victims of Crime Act funding federally is that it comes from a fund of fines and penalties that are assessed when white-collar crime is punished. And because of the current administration, not a lot of white-collar criminals are having fines levied against them. And so that large pot that everything trickles down from is shrinking drastically. So we have to get creative, and I look forward to your help in doing that.
Wonderful. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you, Joanna.
Hello, I'm Alex Castillo. I'm from Elmwood. Jesus, I'm younger than like 20 years than everyone here. The biggest issues, the biggest concerns to me as a younger person in the state is transportation and housing. So I want to thank you for the work that you've done, for the funding that you've secured for this town, for affordable housing, for making our streets safer, for for making West Hartford a place that is still affordable and attainable for somebody like me. But House Bill 5002 was unfortunately vetoed by the governor, and it was just a very big disappointment to me that these measures to try to encourage more housing to be built when we're facing a deficit of 100,000 in the state alone, and I believe there's even estimates of up to 400,000. It was very disappointing that he saw this measure and said that it wasn't right for Connecticut when we need more housing. I need more housing so that I can live in the state that I love, in the town that I love, and I can contribute to these communities and work in the state that I love. And so I just, I want to thank you for the work that you've done for this town. And I'd love to know how you will continue to advocate for maintaining for creating more housing, creating more affordable housing, creating more opportunities for people like me to continue to live in the state.
Thank you. I think you heard a little earlier that, yeah, the business is not done. I think we were just chatting, many of us this week, that not only is there the expectation that we are going to bring forward a housing bill in special session again in September, but that we really want it to, in many ways, be as strong and meaningful a bill as it was, honestly, when we passed it the first time. Because I think one of the reasons that this bill was such a strong priority of the legislature is that this bill and this effort has taken years to put together to make sure that the bill actually tries to address some of the root causes, right, of why we don't have as much housing options in our state. And I would say for West Hartford specifically, this bill was going to be a real win. One of the components of the bill that we will be continuing to push for was often in the past referred to as Work, Live, Ride, which would have provided the town even more funding for the housing that we've already and will continue to build around our transit. And so I would just say personally, and I imagine my colleagues would agree, we are not going to let up until we have this bill in front of us again to vote on this year. I know some of us are trying to push to try to do it sooner, even in July, but we want to get this done, and there's meetings happening now between the legislature, who are the leaders on this bill, and the governor's office. But I would say even when this bill passes, it doesn't mean our efforts around housing are over. I think it really means that we have some more tools for our towns to utilize to get, as I mentioned, some more funding. But in our own town of West Hartford, the mayor and town council have really taken the lead on so many new projects. And I think we want to keep up that momentum and make sure that our state is financially supporting a lot of that, because we can't actually build more housing without some of that financial support in our town.
Well, Kate really broke down. We are going to continue to work on this issue. Was a huge disappointment for so many of us because it did pass the House and it did pass the Senate, and we did not. I was not expecting this to be vetoed, because there were opportunities for the executive branch to weigh in. This has been a long road, and we were very excited about it. So I do believe we will be going back. I know we will be going back. It's just a matter of when about this issue. But I also want to point out and say to you, thank you, even though you pointed out that you're 20 years younger at least than all of us. But but I'd like to thank you. I just really appreciate seeing a young person come forward and really wanting to be a part of this town, a part of this state. This is what we want. This is exactly what we want and that we need. And we know we are an aging state. I mean, we really are. And to not look and listen and provide opportunities for housing, for resources, for transportation, looking at the environment. How can we, really work, live, and ride and be in a place that's sustainable so that we can age in place, right? And so that we can also have young people here and moving in and having families. That's what keeps our community vibrant. So I just really would like to thank you. I appreciate your being here and you being the one to raise this issue, because we hear all the time people are trying to move away. This is a great state. There are a lot of people who want to stay here, and we just need to make sure we have enough housing and different and opportunities and resources for people to do so. So I just wanted to add that. Senator Slap.
Yeah, I would just put a finer point at thank you. And housing is such a big issue. I spoke for about 20 minutes on the floor of the Senate for why we should pass 5002. Don't worry, I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to say that we have the second most restrictive housing regulations in the country, next to Ohio. And CBIA, the Connecticut Business Industry Association, put out a very comprehensive and persuasive report about why we need housing reform. And one statistic that just blows me away. Just more than 60% of single-family homes in the state of Connecticut are zoned, right, in an area where the lot needs to be at least 1 acre. 1 acre for more than 60%. Now, if you live in West Hartford, and I think probably all of us do, I know, Bobby, you don't. We love you anyway. But I have 1/3 of an acre, and West Hartford, we're pretty dense, right? I get it that some people want some more land, but well more than half of all the single-family homes in the state, at least 1 acre. It's choking off growth. It's making our housing so expensive, and it's sending our kids off to other states to find economic opportunity. And the Business and Industry Association says, stop. What are we doing, right? We have to be able to grow jobs and attract workers. So, I mean, we're all with you, and we got to get this done. It's a really critical issue. So,
And on that issue, definitely continue to contact the governor's office, because again, as we continue to push towards special session, there is really, again, a few-month time period where his office needs to hear that this is what people want passed. And that's what's so pivotal is sometimes they hear a lot from the naysayers and not from the folks who actually proactively want something to happen. So I would just encourage that on this issue for sure. Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
As you saw before, I'm Ari Schaefer. I live here in West Hartford. I was going to talk about this anyway, but I do want to thank in particular Senator Slapp and Representative Gilchrist for all their help trying to make Albany, where several synagogues are, safer for us to cross, for people who are Sabbath observant, Jews who are Sabbath observant to cross. Again, we had an important member, a crucial member of our synagogue who was killed in a car accident, so we're very aware of the danger we have crossing the street. So thank you for all you've done. And there's a lot of people are upset about a lot of things, understandably, and the problem seems intractable. But on this small issue. They've been very helpful moving things forward, so thank them for that. I also want to thank you, I guess the entire delegation, for passing extra bonding for security at houses of worship, including synagogues, since October 7th, 2023. Anti-Semitism, acts of anti-Semitism have skyrocketed. Even before then, according to FBI data, despite being 2% of the population, Jews were the targets of over 50% of hate crimes year after year. So that problem has only gone worse, and seeing that support from the legislature allowing us, unfortunately, to spend more to secure our synagogues, allowing us to safely pray, engage in our rituals, really does mean a lot, and is a vote of confidence and means a lot to our community. So thank you for that. One issue that was a little frustrating, there was the bill that made it out of the House for a working group on anti-Semitism in our public schools. It was voted out of the House. We're excited about that. It's an issue. It's an issue everywhere. It's an issue in our public schools too. Never made it off the Senate legislative calendar, and we were upset to see that not make it farther. So we'd love to see more progress on that in future years. I'm wondering if you have any insight into what happened there. And just kind of one last point, I'm the head of Greater Hartford for Israel. We march every Sunday morning in Bishop's Corner for the hostages still held since October 7th, 2023 by terrorists in Gaza. We have about 100 people a week. Senator Blumenthal came a few weeks ago for the second time. Representative John Larson came a couple weeks after that for the third time. The march we have is similar to the march in Boulder that was attacked a few months ago. We have West Hartford Police Department, thankfully, has stepped up their security. Their police coming every week. But this is kind of the reality we live in as Jews in America these days. And this is why I'm come to talk about it, talk about the anti-Semitism. If any of you can join us again, it shows that kind of strength, shows that confidence in us. So thank you very much. What time? Every Sunday morning at 9:30 in Bishop's Corner. We meet at the library.
I will just mention the education bill that the working group was in. I expect that bill, because it was not passed by the Senate and it was a very substantial bill of education priorities, will be a part of the discussion for passage in September. But we will keep that on the radar to make sure that it's included in that package. But that's what I've heard so far about bringing back that full package that was in that bill that didn't pass the Senate. Yep.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jean-Claude. I'm the father of two elementary school boys in our West Hartford public school system. First, let me start by thanking all of you again for your hard work that you do on our behalf and for making yourselves so readily available to us. Thank you so much. Earlier this year, the public school superintendent announced some cuts to, he warned us of some cuts to staffing and services in our public school system. I understand that those may or may not still happen, in large thanks to the special education bill that you guys passed. So thank you for your hard work on that. But in the course of those discussions, it kind of came to light our town's heavy reliance on state funding and property taxes. And so the ensuing difficulty that arises in balancing affordability and the commitment we make to our children and to our students. So I was hoping, first, if you could speak to some of the challenges you guys have on the state level as far as securing funding that keeps pace with the rising costs for education specifically, and also on diversifying our town's revenue streams. And also to provide some suggestions for us on how we can help you, in terms of supporting specific legislation or knocking on someone's door or whatever it takes. Just want to thank you, and also want to also take a moment to thank all the other people who spoke, because it was, really enlightening to get that perspective on how many things that state funding goes to, you know what I mean? And so it's good to know that at least it's not being wasted and it's being spent on really valuable initiatives. So thank you all for that.
We're like, what? Okay.
Where to start?
So, yeah, I mean, and we had a great conversation. You were at one of the meetings earlier, Democratic Town Committee meeting, and we spoke. And boy, if it wasn't a mission of ours before, it was after your conversation. So thank you, lighting a fire. And, I think collectively are very pleased that we were able to really significantly increase. We did it mid-year, special education funding, so 40 million. We get West Hartford about 1.5, 1.6 of that 40 million. So that was the past year, the fiscal year that just ended. And then we wanted to make sure really that established a floor. And so we were going to not go below that. And that's what happened. And so we increased it by another 40 million each year, and actually about 75 million when you add in other funding. But anyways, and we'll be one of the, as I mentioned earlier, we'll receive one of the biggest increases in the state when it comes to special education funding. But you are right. I mean, we touched on this larger issue of, and there's been folks who have been advocating for property tax reform for a long time. We in Connecticut, we don't have, as you know, county government. We don't have municipal extra taxes. New York City and others have municipal sales tax options, things like that. We did propose a bill this past year that there's an existing 1% restaurant tax, as many of you know, in West Hartford. Our restaurants generate a lot of revenue, and we say, you know what, we should be able to keep some of that. It's not an additional tax, by the way. We're not adding any more, but there's an existing 1% restaurant tax, and our proposal, Mayor Cantor, we did a news conference right out in front of, what was the restaurant that we did it in front of? Anyway, it's on Farmington Avenue. That narrows it down. But Zohara, that's it. And we said we should be able to keep the 1%. It was a finance committee. We had the Senate president's support. We're going to have to stay at that. That would be something, that would help chip away at it. And, Sherry Cantor is a terrific mayor. She's always saying, give us more options. Give us more, because they don't want to go to the property tax anymore than we do. The child tax credit that the Representative Farrar mentioned, there are other ways too to help with affordability and relief. The property tax is a big one that we hear complaints about, but the child tax credit, I know, and Kate's been just a real champion on that. The retirement income, Social Security taxes that we're phasing out. We're trying to hit it from all different angles, but I mean, I think you're right. That property tax is the tax I hear the most about. Like, it's not even close. So anyway, I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in terms of kind of some of the solutions, other than just funding, which is a big one.
I'd just say, and maybe now there's going to be a theme here in me talking about the governor, but sometimes the governor will speak to how he has not raised taxes, but in not fully funding education, in turn, we have to increase our property taxes. So I think just for everyone to be aware of that and maybe to push back when that claim is made would be helpful.
Hi, I'm Nicole Wood from West Hartford. I want to come up here in support of my physician colleague, but then also just in support of the healthcare of the community at large, specifically our underserved patients in this community. We know that there are going to be some changes in the general government that are affecting the structures surrounding our healthcare in our community. And as a women's health provider specifically, disproportionately affecting our women's health care and our obstetric services that are largely funded by Medicaid. And with funding cuts from the state government for our public health facilities and our medical trainees. I appreciated your responses about higher education, but I don't know how much community college scholarships quite apply to how we're going to address those changes. And so I was wondering, what are some specific line items you might be bringing to the floor at the special session that might target healthcare for our community and try to improve that, or at least mitigate some of our losses?
So I'll jump in. Yeah. Top priority for me, and many, is Medicaid. Yeah. And so getting just more funding for that program in general. And then specifically when it comes to women's health, as some might know, I'm sure you know, with the work you do, there's been a direct target on Planned Parenthood in the big budget bill that got passed. In terms of for the next year, so effective immediately for the next year, Planned Parenthood cannot receive Medicaid. They are Connecticut's largest family planning provider. And so we stand to lose between $7 million and $12 million immediately. That goes directly to Planned Parenthood. And family planning is not abortion. Family planning is birth control. It is cervical and breast cancer screening. It is testing and treatment for sexually transmitted infections. And so we will also be specifically pushing for those funds to Planned Parenthood, because their intention and what would result is an eventual closing of Planned Parenthoods across this country. We don't have to worry about that in immediate in Connecticut, but long-term, if they continue these cuts, that would be the consequence.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would just, kind of say again, I think all of these attacks on our state, especially health, have great ripple effects, right? I think sometimes the conversation can be just about Medicaid, or it can just be about an individual seeking family planning. But ultimately, the ripple effects are there for all of our medical providers. And therefore, I think it's really incumbent upon us to make that case that it's not just about individual people getting care. It's about our providers being able to receive the funds to even stay open. And the more that we keep making that case, I think we'll have a better chance of being able to actually fund this as a state as well. And I just wanted to really press upon that, because that's going to be pivotal for us being able to keep many of these services and funding streams alive.
I just have one comment too that comes to mind, and I think that's something we're hearing is there's a ripple effect is really what's happening. And so often, people are thinking, well, I'm not someone who's on Medicaid, or Medicaid doesn't apply to me. It is a huge healthcare providers we're hearing. But there will be an impact on providers. There'll be an impact on potentially, I'm not going to say for sure, but people with commercial insurance, private pay. So I don't think anyone can for sure sit in a space of complete comfort. We have so much uncertainty, but they are all connected the way that this works. And when you have that much funding that goes away, and I didn't realize when I talk about the children's behavioral health work, a lot of the children have Medicaid. I mean, then we're talking about loss of those kinds of services. It really is a tremendous impact. It is the kind of thing that I just find to be something that is a very cruel thing to do, and it's very difficult to comprehend the impact that this is going to have on so many.
All right. I see that, Mary Ann, you are up. We are at 7:30, which was our plan to wrap up. There some of us who will be able to stay after. So if you want to talk offline about something, or you have a question that wasn't, or comment that wasn't heard, but we'll plan with Mary Ann to have it be the last one, at least off the podium. And then for folks who have to go, they can do that. And then for folks who want to stay, we can talk more. All right.
Marianne says, I creep up. Marianne says, Patty Ellis, that's me, is my assistant and interpreter. But I am a retired disability troublemaker. I agree. All of our disability bills were not approved. So I'm pissed. But also, two of the bills that are so important is the wheelchair bills.
people who don't know, having your wheelchair repaired could take up to a year. And those were passed last year. Excuse me. Marianne said a law was passed last year. The repairs must be done within 10 days. But that is not the reality, guys. It could take up to a month. And it depends on how much you are a witch. Also, I'm very worried. Was that the wheelchair? I'm very worried that the Wheelchair Advisory Coalition will be disbanded. Because that means we will have no more control. No more control in policy making. Please look at this. Or take away my chair. And then I'll be quiet.
I want to thank you so much, and I do not think you are retired.
No.
I see you pretty much every week. I'll say there was some politics involved in that bill, but also you learn things each session as you're debating, and so the advisory committee, I think a key piece is that we have required that the industry have to submit data monthly with regards to their repairs, and that wouldn't end. Personalities are at play, and there's been some pushback at how much time that committee takes on staff. And so I've already had one conversation. We'll continue to have some conversations with the chairs of that advisory committee to ensure that we can kind of get it right moving forward so that it can continue. And then I think it's having a more direct connection, myself and my co-chair and the members of the Human Services Committee with that advisory committee to really understand what are the key pieces we need to pass, because the industry has significant money and power when it comes to lobbying. And so we really need to be on the same page when we're trying to push policy. And that wasn't the case this year, unfortunately. And I'm sorry. You're welcome.
All right, well, thank you, everyone, for coming out. It's about 7:35, so you get some of your evening back. And again, some of us will stick around if you have comments or you didn't get to ask your question. We're around, cell phones out there, emails. Have a great, safe summer, and we're back in session in February, so before you know it.
Don't.
You can't